The Keeper's warning. The council chamber hung suspended in the void between stars, a structure so vast it could have swallowed moons. Its walls were transparent, revealing the swirling nebulas and distant galaxies that served as backdrop to the most important decisions in known space. Inside, representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered in a circular formation, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some were crystalline beings that chimed with each movement. Others were clouds of sentient gas contained within force fields. Still others resembled nothing the human eye could categorize, shapes that defied geometry and reason. At the center of it all floated a holographic projection of a small blue world, turning slowly in the manufactured light. Earth. The planet's oceans gleamed. Its continents were marked with the lights of cities glowing like embers in the darkness. To the assembled council, it appeared unremarkable, primitive, insignificant. Yet it had been the subject of debate for 3 standard cycles now, and tempers were beginning to fray. "They are a threat," proclaimed Ambassador Thielen of the Crover Dominion, his multiple eyes fixed on the rotating planet. His exoskeleton clicked with agitation as he spoke, each word dripping with contempt. "They have developed nuclear capabilities. They war amongst themselves constantly. They poison their own atmosphere and strip their world of resources. Left unchecked, they will spread this chaos to the stars." A murmur of agreement rippled through portions of the assembly. Other voices rose in counter-argument, creating a discordant symphony of alien languages that the translation matrix struggled to harmonize. "They are young," offered Counselor Mirith, a being of flowing silver light. Her voice was soft, almost musical, but it carried weight. "All species go through growing pains. We cannot condemn them for walking a path we all once walked." "Growing pains?" Thalen's voice rose to a screech. "They have weapons capable of rendering their own planet uninhabitable. They create diseases in laboratories. They manipulate the very building blocks of life itself, without understanding the consequences. This is not youthful indiscretion. This is existential recklessness." Grand Executor Vorath of the Vorlan Empire leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow across the chamber floor. The Vorlans were the Council's military might, their empire spanning 700 systems. When Vorath spoke, others listened. "Perhaps intervention is indeed necessary," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "Not destruction, mind you. Simply guidance. We bring them into the fold before they become a problem. Show them there are consequences to aggression. Teach them their place in the galactic order." More voices joined in support. The debate grew heated, passionate, almost theatrical in its intensity. Plans were proposed, strategies debated, timelines established. The council was moving toward consensus, toward action, toward a decision that would seal the fate of an entire world. And then the temperature in the chamber dropped. It was not a physical cold, not something that could be measured by instruments or explained by environmental controls malfunctioning. It was a cold that went deeper, that touched something primal in every species present. Conversations died mid-sentence. The holographic projection of Earth flickered and dimmed. Even the stars beyond the transparent walls seemed to hold their breath. The light in the center of the chamber began to bend. Space itself twisted, folding in ways that hurt to observe. Reality rippled like water disturbed by a stone, and from that disturbance stepped a figure that should not exist. It was tall, taller than any species present, wrapped in robes that seemed woven from the fabric of space itself. Stars glittered in its garments. Constellations shifted across its form, and where its face should have been there was only shadow and the suggestion of eyes older than galaxies. The Keeper had arrived. The chamber fell into absolute silence. Even those who had never heard the legends recognized what stood before them. This was a being from before the Council, from before the great civilizations, from a time when the universe was young and the first intelligent thoughts were being born among the stars. The Keeper was a witness to epochs, a wanderer of eons, an entity whose purpose remained unknown but whose presence was never without meaning. When it spoke, its voice resonated not through the air but directly in the minds of all present, bypassing language entirely. "You debate the fate of Earth," it said, and those simple words carried the weight of certainty. "You plan intervention, correction, control." Grand Executor Vorath recovered first, his military training overriding his instinctive unease. "Ancient One," he said, inclining his massive head respectfully, "your appearance honors us. We seek only to prevent a potential threat from emerging. Surely you understand the necessity of maintaining order." The Keeper's attention turned toward Vorath, and the executor felt himself being examined at a level that went beyond physical observation. It was as if every decision he had ever made, every thought he had ever entertained was being weighed and measured in an instant. "I understand," the Keeper replied. "I understand far more than you realize. I have walked among the humans. I have watched them since they first discovered fire and cowered in caves from predators that hunted them in the darkness. I have seen every step of their journey, every triumph and every tragedy, and I tell you now with absolute certainty what you must hear." The ancient being's form seemed to grow larger, more imposing, filling the chamber with its presence. Its voice, when it continued, carried a gravity that made the very atoms tremble. "Do not provoke them. Do not go to Earth. Do not make the mistake of thinking you understand what they are." Ambassador Thalen's clicking intensified, a sign of his species' incredulity. "Ancient One, with respect, we have observed them extensively. They are fractured, violent, self-destructive. What threat could they possibly pose to civilizations millions of years more advanced?" The Keeper turned slowly, regarding the assembled council with something that might have been pity. "You look at them and see primitives playing with dangerous toys. You see their wars and their weapons and you think you understand violence. You see their divisions and you think they are weak." The ancient being paused, and in that pause entire civilizations could have risen and fallen. "You see them as they are now, in this single frozen moment of their existence. I have seen them across time. I know what they were. I know what they are becoming. And I know what they are capable of when pushed." "Surely you exaggerate," Counselor Myrith said gently. "They are one world, Ancient One. One species, barely unified. We are thousands of civilizations, millions of worlds. The disparity is irrelevant." The Keeper interrupted, and for the first time something that might have been emotion entered its voice. "You think in terms of numbers and technology. You think victory is calculated by fleet sizes and weapons yields. The humans were forged in a crucible you cannot comprehend. Their world tried to kill them every single day for millions of years, and they refused to die. Predators that could tear them apart hunted them. Diseases that should have wiped them out made them stronger. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, their own planet waged war against them, and they survived it all." The Keeper's form pulsed with an inner light that seemed to dim the stars beyond the walls. "More than survived. They thrived. They turned predators into companions. They turned killing into art and art into weapons. They split the atom not in laboratories built over centuries of academic study, but in the midst of a war that consumed their entire world. They reached their moon not through patient exploration but through competition born of fear and pride. Everything they have accomplished despite their world trying to destroy them." Grand Executor Vorath straightened to his full height, his pride stung by the implications. "The Vorlan Empire has conquered 700 systems. We have integrated thousands of species. We have fought wars that spanned sectors. Are you suggesting that one primitive world could stand against us?" The Keeper regarded him for a long moment, and in that gaze, Vorath felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. Real. Primal fear. "I am suggesting," the Keeper said quietly, "that if you provoke them, if you threaten their world, you will unite them in ways you cannot imagine. And when humanity stops fighting itself and turns its attention to an external threat, you will discover what it means to face a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to kill." The chamber remained silent. Some of the assembled representatives shifted uncomfortably. Others maintained their skeptical expressions, but their confidence had been shaken. The Keeper began to fade, its form growing translucent, the stars in its robes dimming. "I have walked this universe for longer than your species have had words for time," it said, its voice growing distant. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched civilizations that seemed eternal crumble to dust. And I tell you now, I have never encountered a species quite like humanity. They are unique in the cosmos, shaped by forces that would have destroyed any other race." The ancient being was almost gone now, just a shimmer in the air, a distortion of light. Its final words echoed in every mind present, carrying a weight that would haunt them in the days to come. The price of arrogance. The Vorlan Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a swarm of metallic predators. 300 warships, each one a kilometer long, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had withstood the fury of 1,000 battles. They moved in perfect formation, a display of military precision that had brought 700 systems to their knees. On the bridge of the flagship Dominance, Grand Executor Vorath stood before the main viewport, his massive frame silhouetted against the distant light of Sol. Behind him, his officers worked at their stations with practiced efficiency, their movements sharp and confident. This was routine. They had done this hundreds of times before. Arrive, demonstrate power. Accept surrender. Integrate. Status report. Vorath commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge. All ships in formation, Executor, replied his tactical officer. Weapons primed. Shields at maximum. We are detecting multiple satellites in orbit around the third planet. Primitive communication arrays. Some weapons platforms, but nothing that poses a threat to our shields. Vorath allowed himself a thin smile. As expected, open a channel on all frequencies. Let us introduce ourselves. The communication officer worked her console and moments later nodded. Channel open, Executor. Broadcasting in all detectable languages. Vorath straightened, assuming the posture of authority that had served him well in countless negotiations. Inhabitants of Earth, he began, his words being translated simultaneously into hundreds of human languages. This is Grand Executor Vorath of the Vorlon Empire, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. You have been observed. Your development has been noted. Your potential has been assessed. You are hereby commanded to cease all military operations, dismantle your weapons of mass destruction, and prepare for integration into the galactic community. Failure to comply will result in forceful intervention. You have one standard rotation to respond. Consider your position carefully. He gestured, and the communication officer closed the channel. Vorath turned to his tactical officer. Fire a demonstration shot. Target their moon, surface level only. Let them see what our weapons can do. Sometimes primitives need a visual reminder of their situation. Yes, Executor. One of the Vorlon warships broke formation, angling toward Earth's moon. Its main cannon began to charge, energy building in a visible corona of blue-white light. The weapon discharged with devastating precision, and a lance of pure energy streaked across the void. It struck the lunar surface in the Sea of Tranquility, vaporizing rock and creating a new crater visible from Earth itself. The blast was calculated perfectly, powerful enough to inspire fear but not powerful enough to cause significant damage. A warning, a demonstration, a promise of what would come if they resisted. On the bridge of the Dominance, the crew waited for the response they had seen countless times before. Panic, chaos, desperate pleas for mercy. Sometimes defiant rhetoric that quickly collapsed into negotiation. It always ended the same way. Submission. But the response that came from Earth was not what they expected. First, there was silence. Complete, absolute silence. No frantic communication attempts. No broadcasts of fear or confusion. No desperate diplomatic overtures. The planet simply went quiet, and in that quiet, something shifted. The tactical officer's multiple eyes widened in alarm. Executor, I'm detecting massive power surges across the planet's surface. Their satellites are repositioning. Something is happening. Elaborate, Vorath demanded, stepping closer to the tactical display. I'm not certain, Executor. Energy signatures are spiking in hundreds of locations. Underground facilities are activating. Whatever they had hidden, they're bringing it online. Wait. The officer's voice rose in pitch. Executor, I'm detecting launch signatures. Hundreds of them. Thousands. They're launching everything. Vorath felt a cold knot form in his chest, but he forced confidence into his voice. Primitive missiles. Our shields will— These aren't missiles, Executor. The tactical officer's voice had gone from confident to uncertain to something approaching fear. These are— I don't know what these are. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. They're accelerating at impossible rates. Executor. Some of them are already halfway across the distance between us and Earth. All ships raise shields to maximum, Vorath commanded. Prepare point defense systems. Destroy anything that gets close. The Vorlon fleet responded instantly. Thousands of defensive weapons coming online, creating a perimeter of overlapping fields of fire that nothing should have been able to penetrate. The approaching objects, whatever they were, entered range. The point defense systems opened fire. Energy beams and projectiles filled the void. creating a wall of destruction. They struck the approaching objects, and for a moment the Vorlans thought they had succeeded. Then the objects punched through. They moved like nothing the Vorlans had ever encountered. They dodged, weaved, adjusted their trajectories with impossible precision. Some took hits and simply absorbed them, their surfaces barely scorched. Others deployed countermeasures that confused targeting systems. Still others split apart, becoming dozens of smaller threats that scattered and attacked from multiple angles. The first impacts struck the Vorlan shields, and reality seemed to shudder. These were not explosive warheads. These were weapons designed with a fundamentally different understanding of physics. Some phased through the shields entirely as if they weren't there. Others created localized gravity wells that crushed shield generators. Still others released electromagnetic pulses that cascaded through entire ship systems, leaving vessels dead in space. Shields failing on multiple ships, the tactical officer shouted. Sectors 7 through 12 are reporting catastrophic damage. We've lost 17 vessels. No, 23. Executor, the destruction is accelerating. Vorath stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Red markers were appearing across the map like a plague spreading through his fleet. Ships that had weathered battles against advanced civilizations were being torn apart by a species that shouldn't have been able to touch them. Return fire, he roared. All ships concentrated barrage on the planet's surface. If they want war, we'll give them oblivion. The Vorlan fleet, or what remained of it, turned its weapons toward Earth. Hundreds of cannons charged, preparing to unleash devastation on the blue world below. They fired in unison, a wave of destruction that could have shattered continents. The beams never reached their target. Something intercepted them. A network of platforms that hadn't been there moments before suddenly appeared around Earth, materializing from stealth or emerging from hidden positions. They generated fields of energy that caught the Vorlan weapons' fire and deflected it harmlessly into space. But they didn't stop there. The platforms returned fire, and their weapons were even more terrifying than the projectiles that had already devastated the fleet. Beams of coherent light, so intense they appeared solid, sliced through Vorlan warships like a knife through flesh. Railgun projectiles, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, punched through shields and armor with contemptuous ease. And most terrifying of all, weapons that seemed to simply erase matter, leaving perfect spherical voids where proud warships had been moments before. The Vorlan formation collapsed into chaos. Ships tried to retreat, to regroup, to respond with their own devastating firepower, but they were outmatched in every category. Their weapons couldn't penetrate Earth's defenses. Their shields couldn't stop Earth's weapons. Their tactical systems couldn't track the impossible maneuvers of human craft that had now joined the battle. Small fighters that moved with an agility that defied physics as the Vorlans understood it. Executor, the communication officer's voice cracked with panic. We're receiving transmissions from the other council fleets. They're demanding to know what's happening. They're watching the battle. The entire galaxy is watching. Vorath barely heard her. He was transfixed by the viewport, watching his invincible armada die. Ships exploded in silent fury. Escape pods were launching only to be systematically tracked and captured by human vessels. Not destroyed, captured. The humans wanted survivors. They wanted witnesses. A proximity alarm screamed. Vorath turned to see a human fighter craft approaching the Dominance. It was sleek, dark, covered in angular surfaces that absorbed sensor scans. It shouldn't have been able to get this close. Every defensive system should have obliterated it. But there it was. And as Vorath watched, it launched a single projectile. The projectile struck the flagship's main generator. The lights on the bridge flickered and died, replaced by emergency illumination that painted everything in shades of red. Power failed across the ship. Weapons went offline. Shields collapsed. Life support continued, but only barely. They were alive. The humans had specifically targeted systems that would disable but not destroy. They could have killed everyone aboard. Instead, they had surgically removed the Dominance from the battle while leaving the crew alive. The implication was more terrifying than annihilation would have been. In the red-lit darkness of the bridge, Vorath finally understood. The Keeper had tried to warn them. The ancient being had seen something the Council's arrogance had blinded them to. Humanity wasn't just another primitive species stumbling toward the stars. They were something unique, something forged in conditions that made them fundamentally different from every other spacefaring civilization. They had spent their entire existence learning to survive against impossible odds. They had turned their death world into a paradise through sheer stubborn determination. They had weaponized everything, learned to kill with sticks and stones and atoms and light. And when an external threat appeared, they had done exactly what the Keeper predicted. They had stopped fighting each other and turned their collective fury outward. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 17 minutes. Of the 300 warships that had entered Earth's solar system with confidence and pride, only 43 remained intact. The rest were debris, or captured, or fleeing, at maximum speed with human fighters in pursuit, herding them away from Earth like predators driving prey. The Dominance hung dead in space, surrounded by human vessels that could have destroyed it at any moment but chose not to. Vorath stood at the darkened viewport, looking at the blue world that had just shattered the most powerful military force in the Council. And then Earth spoke. The communication systems running on emergency power crackled to life. The voice that came through was calm, measured, almost conversational. It spoke in perfect Vorlan. Grand Executor Vorath, this is General Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. Your fleet has been neutralized. Your survivors will be treated according to the standards of warfare and returned to you unharmed. Your dead will be honored and returned to your people. We did not want this conflict. You brought it to us. There was a pause, and when the voice continued, it carried an edge that made Vorath's blood run cold. You fired on our moon. You threatened our world. You demanded our surrender. You demonstrated your weapons thinking we would be intimidated. You were wrong. We have been preparing for this moment since we first looked at the stars and wondered what else was out there. We hoped for friends. We prepared for enemies. Today, you showed us which you chose to be. Another pause. Longer this time. We are returning your survivors and your dead because we want you to understand something. We could have destroyed every ship in your fleet. We could have killed everyone aboard. We chose not to. Not because we lack the capability, but because we understand restraint. We understand mercy. We understand that even in war there are lines that separate civilization from barbarism. We hope you will remember this lesson. The communication cut off, leaving Vorath alone with the red emergency lights and the knowledge of his failure. Around him, his crew sat in stunned silence, processing what had just happened. Hours later, human ships began the process of returning Vorlan survivors to their disabled vessels. Medical teams came aboard the Dominance, treating wounded crew members with efficient professionalism. They spoke little, worked quickly, and left as soon as their task was complete. The message was clear. This was not the beginning of diplomacy. This was the end of a lesson. When the Vorlan ships finally limped back to Council space, they carried, with them, a truth that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of humanity. The news had already spread. Every civilization had watched the battle through long-range sensors and intercepted communications. They had seen the mighty Vorlan fleet broken in minutes. They had heard Earth's measured response, more frightening than any threat. The Council reconvened in their grand chamber, but the atmosphere had changed. The confidence was gone, replaced by uncertainty and, in some cases, fear. Grand Executor Vorath stood before them, his pride shattered, his body bearing the marks of his defeat. And in the center of the chamber, reality began to bend. The Keeper returned. The ancient being materialized as it had before, tall and imposing, wrapped in robes of starlight. But this time, no one questioned its presence. No one dismissed its words as exaggeration or legend. They had learned. You were warned, the Keeper said, its voice resonating in every mind present. I told you not to provoke them. I told you that you did not understand what they were. You did not listen. Vorath met the ancient being's gaze, his multiple eyes dim with defeat. You were right, Ancient One. We were fools. We thought numbers and technology would be enough. We were wrong. The Keeper moved through the chamber, its form seeming to exist in multiple places simultaneously. You still do not fully understand, it said. What you witnessed was not humanity at its full strength. It was humanity restrained. humanity calculating, humanity showing mercy because they chose to, not because they had to. The words settled over the assembled council like a shroud. They could have pursued your fleeing ships and destroyed them, the Keeper continued. They could have launched attacks on your homeworlds. They could have demonstrated the true extent of their capabilities. Instead, they stopped at their borders. They returned your dead with honor. They treated your wounded. They showed you what they are capable of, then showed you restraint. Counselor Mireth's light flickered uncertainly. What are they, Ancient One? What makes them so different from us? The Keeper turned its ageless gaze toward her. They are what happens when a species is forged in fire and refuses to break. Every other civilization in this council evolved on worlds that were, by galactic standards, relatively gentle. Stable climates, few natural predators, resources in abundance. You grew slowly, peacefully, developing wisdom before power. The ancient being's form pulsed with inner light. Humanity evolved on a death world, a planet that actively tried to destroy them through ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, and predators that saw them as prey. They survived by becoming the apex predator of their world. They learned to cooperate because isolation meant death. They learned to innovate because stagnation meant extinction. They learned to fight because everything on their planet wanted them dead. The Keeper paused, letting the words sink in. When you develop nuclear weapons, it is after millennia of philosophical development, of ethical frameworks, of social structures designed to prevent their use. When humanity developed nuclear weapons, they were in the middle of a global war, and they used them, not because they were evil, but because they were desperate and pragmatic. That is who they are. That is what their world made them. Ambassador Thielen's clicking had stopped entirely. His voice was small when he spoke. What do we do now, Ancient? 1. How do we coexist with such a species? For the first time, something that might have been approval entered the Keeper's presence. You leave them alone. You respect their borders. You approach them with humility if you approach them at all. And perhaps if you are very fortunate, they may choose to share their knowledge and strength with you rather than turn it against you. The ancient being began to fade, its message delivered. They did not show you their worst, it said as its form grew translucent. They showed you mercy. They showed you restraint. They showed you that even in their power, they hold to principles. Never forget that. Never forget that they could have done so much worse. The Keeper's final words echoed through the chamber as it disappeared. I warned you not to provoke them. Now you understand why. Humanity is not like you. They are not like anyone. They are unique in this galaxy, shaped by forces that would have destroyed any other species. They are dangerous, yes, but they are also capable of compassion, of growth, of choosing to be better than their nature demands. And then the ancient being was gone, leaving behind a council that had been humbled, a galaxy that had been warned, and a small blue world that continued to spin peacefully among the stars. On Earth, General Chen stood in the command center watching displays that showed Vorlan ships limping back toward their territory. Around her, her officers monitored thousands of data streams, tracking every vessel, ensuring they departed as agreed. Status? She asked quietly. All Vorlan ships are withdrawing, General. No signs of regrouping or preparing for another assault. Long-range sensors show multiple Council civilizations recalling their fleets from our sector. They're giving us a wide berth. Chen nodded slowly. Good. Stand down to alert level 3, but keep all systems online. This isn't over. It's just beginning. General, her communication officer said hesitantly, we're receiving thousands of transmissions from across the galaxy. Requests for diplomatic contact, offers of trade, appeals for alliance. Everyone wants to talk now. Chen allowed herself a thin smile. Interesting how that works. Yesterday we were primitives to be conquered. Today we're potential allies. She turned from the displays, her expression thoughtful. Respond to all communications with polite acknowledgement. Tell them we're reviewing their messages and will respond in due course. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Let them remember what happened when one of their empires tried to force our hand. She walked to the window overlooking Earth's sprawling defense complex. Above, the sky was clear, blue, and beautiful. Somewhere up there, beyond the atmosphere, the galaxy was reevaluating everything it thought it knew about humanity. "We didn't want this fight," Chen said softly, more to herself than anyone else. "But we were ready for it. We've always been ready. That's what they don't understand. We've been fighting for survival since our ancestors learned to walk upright. We've been preparing for external threats since we first looked at the stars. And we'll keep preparing, keep watching, keep being ready because that's what humans do. We survive, no matter what." Behind her, the command center hummed with quiet efficiency. Defense grids monitored every approach to Earth. Satellites tracked every ship in the solar system. Weapons platforms, visible and hidden, stood ready to activate at a moment's notice. The galaxy had learned a lesson today. Humanity was not to be provoked, not to be threatened, not to be underestimated. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the Keeper watched and waited, as it had for eons. It had warned them. It had tried to prevent bloodshed. Now it could only observe as the galaxy adjusted to a new reality. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage not with a whisper, but with thunder. The Council had learned. The empires had learned. And across 1,000 worlds and 1,000,000 different languages, the same message was spreading. Do not provoke Earth. Remember what happened to those who did. Remember the warning that was ignored. Remember that the ancient being tried to tell you. And never, ever forget that what humanity showed you was restraint, not limitation. The lesson had been taught. The price had been paid, and the galaxy would never look at the small blue world the same way again.